Namu Amida Bu. Thank you so much for dropping by. So this is going to be a kind of virtual service and dedicated to the teachings of the Buddha. So thank you so much for dropping by. We've got one live viewer right now. Hi, and a warm welcome to anyone who's watching the recording of this. So let's start at the beginning. Homage to him, and so this, of course, is dedicated to both the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and Amida Buddha, the Buddha of limitless light. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namu Amida Bu. Namu Amida Bu. Namu Amida Bu. So, I'm going to start off by spending some time reflecting on what's considered to be the four thoughts that turn one towards the Dharma. Meaning the four, and they're not just thoughts, the four facts of existence that when one reflects on them, leads one to desire to become free and then to follow the path of the Buddha, which leads to that freedom. So the first thought is the reflecting on the preciousness of human birth. So as a human being, we take our human birth for granted. We don't reflect on how amazing it is to be a human. And from the Buddhist point of view, not just how amazing, but how rare it is. There's a Buddhist parable that speaks to the rarity of it, that attaining a human birth is like a giant turtle or tortoise at the bottom of the ocean that rises up to the surface once every, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact details, every 10,000 years it rises up to the surface and pokes its head out and then goes back down and waits for another 10,000 years. And on the vast ocean of this earth, let's imagine that there's one raft, and that when this turtle rises up, if it happens to poke its head against the raft, that's how often a human birth occurs. That it's very rare, deeply rare. So let's spend a little, and that the reason why it's so precious, so first of all, that's the rarity. The reason why it's so precious is because it's only in a human birth that we have the opportunity to practice the Dharma, the path that leads, the Buddhist Dharma, the path that leads to liberation. So according to the insight of the Buddha, there are 6 different realms through which we as an immortal soul transmigrate over and over and over countless times. And the human realm is the only realm in which it's possible to practice spirituality, to find our freedom from this very vicious cycle. We'll talk a little bit about that cycle in a little bit. So let's reflect on this, how rare it is. The opportunity we have to practice and grow spiritually, ultimately to become free of this cycle. So let's just reflect for a few minutes. The preciousness of human birth. And on top of it, it's even more rare to be born onto a planet where a Buddha has been, much less to hear the teachings of a Buddha. So let's reflect on how lucky we are to not just have a human birth, but to have a human birth on a planet, in a time and a place where the teachings of the Buddha, where a Buddha has been, and where the teachings of a Buddha are available. So, the second great thought that turns one towards the Dharma is reflecting on impermanence and death. So, while we don't like to think in this way, the reality of it is that everything around us is impermanent. Everything around us is in a state of decay. Even this earth, even the sun is in a state of dying, passing. Some things last a little longer than others. The sun's going to last a little longer than my current pair of sneakers. Yet they both have the same quality of impermanence. So let's reflect on that what we're looking for is permanent happiness, and something that's impermanent cannot give it to us. And of course, everything around us is impermanent. Now, on top of that, death is imminent for each and every one of us. In fact, this life is quite fragile and it can end in a moment's notice. The current world events with COVID-19 show this to us that life here is fundamentally unstable and unreliable. The inevitable end for each one of us is for this life to end, for this body to become a corpse. And even more so, to be stripped of everything, all relations, all possessions. None of it will accompany us. So, given that everything around us is impermanent, and given that death is the only thing that's reliable here in this world, let's decide to practice the Dharma, to seek our way out of this cycle of rebirth. The third thing to reflect on is the law of karma, the law of cause and effect. This, of course, is a very profound topic, but in terms of reflecting on it deeply, let's reflect on the fact that when we leave this body, none of our possessions come with us, but our karma does. Here's a quote from the Sutra of Instructions to the King, a Buddhist text. It says, "When the moment comes to leave, O king," leave, a polite way saying croak or die. "When the moment comes to leave, O king, neither possessions, friends, nor family can follow. But wherever beings come from, wherever they go, their actions follow them like their own shadow." Many people think of death as a way to escape the consequences of their actions, yet according to the Buddha, that's completely wrong. The one thing we do take with us is our actions. And furthermore, our actions determine our next birth. Given that a human birth is so rare, most people will probably not be reborn in their next life as a human, according to the Buddhist teaching. Can spend quite a bit of time wandering until they have this opportunity again. So reflect on this. And the fourth thought that um, turns one's attention towards the Dharma is the unsatisfactory nature of this whole process, which the Buddha called samsara, meaning cyclical transmigration from lifetime to lifetime, forgetting. That's the thing. We don't remember what happened in our past lives. So that which is most precious to us, maybe a work of art we create, maybe a friendship that we have, a relationship, not only is that stripped from us when we die, but then we forget about it completely as if it never had been. And of course, every lifetime ends, no matter how good the life is, it ends with a loss. So it's not to say that there aren't pleasant, wonderful things that happen in life. However, every lifetime ends the same way, with everything being stripped away from us, everything we value. It's as if we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going, and then upon leaving this life, all the memories of this, I don't know, I believe that what the Buddha would say is that we become unconscious. We do forget them, not that they can't, that they will be remembered upon enlightenment, but I'll have to check on that. I'm not sure what the Buddha's teaching is. But that in essence, everything gets completely taken away from us. And that this happens not just once, not just twice, but countless times. So that's the playing field that, according to the Buddha, we find ourselves on. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, if you trust that the teachings of the Buddha are true, and you trust that we're on this very painful cycle of reincarnating over and over, and you want out, then you can reach towards the Dharma. So, in essence, there's two different types of Buddhism. And one type is through one making one's own effort to free oneself from samsara. And the second type is you rely on, as opposed, the first type is focusing on self-power to free myself from samsara. And the second is other power, where you rely on the, you could say grace, but you rely on the enlightenment, the goodness, in Buddhist terms, what's called the merit of a Buddha, of a being who has freed themselves from samsara and who is then able to help other beings who are still caught in it. So that kind of concludes the first part, and that was sort of universal. All Buddhists would agree with that, everything I just said in essence. The second part is going to be focused on those who are seeking to rely on other power, as opposed to them making their efforts to extricate themselves, want to entrust themselves, rely on other power to free themselves. So this, of course, is focused on the Jodo Shinshu tradition, which you can read more about or drop by my channel. I talk about it extensively here on this channel. And I'm going to chant then something called Shoshinge, which is translates as the hymn of true Shinjin, which means true and trusting faith, and the Nembutsu, which is a method of saying the Buddha's name to a particular Buddha's name to stay mindful and to be connected to that Buddha. But ultimately, this is a path of literally just relying on and entrusting ourselves, in essence, entrusting our fate to a particular Buddha named Amitabha, the Buddha of limitless light. In Japanese, it translates as Amida. So I'm going to chant this now. You can find this on the web, Shoshinge. I take refuge in the Tathagata of immeasurable life. I entrust myself to the Buddha of inconceivable light, Bodhisattva Dharmakara, in his causal stage under the guidance of Lokeshvaraja Buddha, searched into the origin of the Buddha's pure lands and the qualities of those lands and their men and Deva. He then established the supreme incomparable vow. He made the great vow rare and all-encompassing. In 5 kalpas of profound thought, he embraced the vow, then resolved again that his name be heard throughout the 10 quarters. Everywhere he cast light, immeasurable, boundless, unhindered, unequaled light, Lord of all brilliance, pure light, joyful light, the light of wisdom, light constant, inconceivable, light beyond speaking, light excelling sun and moon, he sends forth, illuminating countless worlds. The multitude of beings all receive the radiance. The name embodying the primal vow is the act of true settlement. The vow of entrusting with sincere mind is the cause of birth. We realize the equal of enlightenment and supreme nirvana through the fulfillment of the vow of attaining nirvana without fail. Shakyamuni Tathagata appeared in this world solely to teach the ocean-like primal vow of Amida. We, an ocean of beings and in an evil age of 5 defilements, should entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's words of truth. When the one thought moment of joy arises, nirvana is attained without severing blind passions. When ignorant and wise, even grave offenders and slanderers of the Dharma, all alike turn and enter Shinjin. They are like water on entering the ocean, become one and taste with it the light of compassion that grasps us, illumines, and protects us always. The darkness of our ignorance is already broken through. Still the cloud and mist of greed and desire, anger and hatred cover, as always, the sky of true and real Shinjin. But the light of the sun is veiled by clouds and mist. Beneath the clouds and mist there is brightness, not darkness. When one realizes Shinjin, seeing and revering and attaining joy, one immediately leaps crosswise, closing off the 5 evil courses. All foolish beings, whether good or evil, when they hear and entrust to Amida's universal vow, are praised by the Buddhas as people of vast and excellent understanding. Such a person is called a pure white lotus. For evil sentient beings of wrong views and error against the Nimbutsu that embodies Amida's primal vow is hard to accept in Shinjin. This most difficult of difficulties, nothing surpasses the masters of India in the West who explain the teachings and treatises, and the eminent monks of China and Japan clarified the great sage's true intent in appearing in the world, and revealed that Amida's primal vow accords with the nature of beings. Shakyamuni Tathagata on Mount Lanka prophesies to the multitudes that in South India the Mahasattva Nagarjuna would appear in this world to crush the views of being and non-being, proclaiming the unexcelled Mahayana teaching. He would attain the stage of joy and be born in the land of happiness. Nagarjuna clarifies the hardship on the overland path of difficult practice and leads us to entrust to the pleasure on the water way of easy practice. He teaches that the moment one thinks of Amida's primal vow, one is naturally brought to enter the stage of definitely settled, solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly. One should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. Bodhisattva Vasubandhu composed a treatise declares that he takes refuge in the Tathagata of unhindered light, and that relying on the sutras, he will reveal the true and real virtues and make widely known the great vow by which we lead crosswise beyond birth and death. He discloses the mind that is single, so that all beings be saved by Amida's directing of virtue through the power of the primal vow. When a person turns and enters the great treasure ocean of virtue, necessarily he joins Amida's assembly, and when he reaches that lotus-held world, he immediately realizes the body of suchness or Dharma nature. Then sporting in the forest of blind passions, he manifests transcendent powers. Entering the garden of birth and death, he assumes various forms to guide others. Turning towards the dwelling of Master Tuanlan, the Emperor of Liang, always paid homage to him as a bodhisattva. Bodhorichi, master of the Tripitaka, gave Tenlan the Pure Land teaching, and Tenluan, burning his Taoist scriptures, took refuge in the land of bliss. In his commentary on the treatise of Bodhisattva Vasubandhu, he shows that the cause and attainment of birth in the fulfilled land lie in the vow, are going and returning, directed to us by Amida, comes about through other power. The truly decisive cause is Shinjin. When a foolish being of delusion and defilement awakens Shinjin, he realizes that birth and death is itself nirvana. Without fail, he reaches the land of immeasurable light and universally guides sentient beings to enlightenment. Tao Chao determined how difficult it is to fulfill the path of sages, and reveals that only passage through the Pure Land Gate is possible for us. He criticizes self-power endeavor in the myriad good practice, and encourages us solely to say the fulfilled name, embodying true virtue. With kind concern he teaches the three characteristics of entrusting and non-entrusting, compassionately guiding all identically, whether they live when the Dharma survives as but form, when in its last stage, or when it has become extinct. Though a person has committed evil all his life, when he encounters the primal vow, he will reach the world of peace and realize the perfect fruit of enlightenment. Shantal alone in his time clarified the Buddha's true intent, sorrowing at the plight of meditative and non-meditative practices and people of grave evil. He reveals that Amida's light and name are the cause of birth. When the practicer enters the great ocean of wisdom primal vow, he receives the diamond-like mind and accords with the one thought moment of joy, whereupon equally with Vaidhe he acquires the threefold wisdom, and is immediately brought to attain the eternal bliss of Dharma nature. Genshin, having broadly elucidated the teachings of Shakyamuni's lifetime, wholeheartedly took refuge in the land of peace, and urges all to do so, ascertaining that minds devoted to single practice are profound, so sundry practices shallow. He sets forth truly the difference between the fulfilled land and the transformed land. The person burdened with extreme evil should simply say the name. Although I too am within Amida's grasp, passions obstruct my eyes, and I cannot see him. Nevertheless, great compassion is untiring and illumines me always. Master Genku, well versed in the Buddha's teaching, turn compassionately to foolish people, both good and evil, establishing in this remote land the teaching and realization that are the true essence of the Pure Land Way. He transmits the selected primal vow to us of the defiled world. Return to this house of transmigration, birth and death. It is decidedly caused by doubt. Swift entrance into the city of tranquility, the uncreated. It is necessarily brought about by Shinjin. The Mahasattvas and masters who spread the sutras save the countless beings of utter defilement and evil. With the same mind, all people of the present, whether monk or lay, should rely wholly on the teaching of these venerable masters. Namu Amida Bu. 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 I'd like to thank everyone who joined in live. The sun set during that beautiful chanting. And to those who joined in live, thank you so much. To everyone watching this video, thank you so much. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. So let's recognize our inability to save ourselves, our inability to attain Buddhahood based on our own power. And let's wholeheartedly turn to the compassionate primal vow of Amida Buddha and entrust ourselves, entrust our karmic destiny to the Buddha of immeasurable light. Thank you so much for joining in. Namu Amida Bu.